Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's monthly shiur for ladies in honor of Rosh Chodesh, the festival of the women. This Chodesh, this month, is Heshvan or Mar Heshvan. Sometimes in the Zohar it's referred to as Heshvan. In other places, the Gemara is referred to as Mar Heshvan. What does Mar Heshvan mean? What does this month mean? What is its spiritual content? So what does Mar mean? Heshvan is the name of the month, but it's actually written as one word, Mar Heshvan. So the word in Hebrew Mar can mean bitter. And why would this month be referred to as a bitter month? Because we're just coming from a month full of festivals. The month of Tishrei is full of festivals. Rosh Hashanah, where we crown God as our King. Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. Sukkot, which is the month of the festival of joy and happiness. And Simchat Shmini Atzeret, the festival that unites us with God. And of course, Simchat Torah, rejoicing with the Torah. A month full of and satiated with spiritual delight, spiritual upliftment, spiritual elevation. All of a sudden there seems to be an anticlimax. And that anticlimax is Heshvan. And maybe that's why it's called Mar Heshvan, as is suggested by some, Mar being bitter, because it is empty of major spiritual content that we have just come from, seeming an anticlimax. And really, seemingly, if there is to be a month that has no festivals, then why is it right after the month of Tishrei? Maybe it should be another month, not should be such an anticlimax coming from such a high level from one that is so full of festivals to nothing. Maybe it's an opportunity for the ladies to rejuvenate and recuperate. Maybe that's why it's there, but I don't think so. It is also referred to as Mar because some bitter things happened there. The flood began but also ended in the month of Heshvan. And we also know that when Yarav, the evil and wicked Yarav and Benavot took over the northern kingdom, he established a festival. He first of all wasn't happy that the people were going to Jerusalem to serve in the temple. He established a festival, a pagan festival on Heshvan, which is a disaster for the Jewish people. The Jewish people that were warned by God so many times not to serve idols. What a disaster by a king and in the land of Israel to the Jewish nation. But also, perhaps Mar could be I forgot the word, title. For example, we have in the Gemara, Mar Ukva, the master Ukva. Amar Mar, the master said. The word in Hebrew, Mar, means master. So maybe Mar Heshvan means the month of Heshvan, Mar Heshvan, the master Heshvan, that perhaps connotes something that is tremendously great and superior. We also know that in the month of Heshvan, the rain starts. So we have the pilgrimage to Bet HaMikdash. Right after the pilgrimage of the Bet HaMikdash, we give a chance for the Jewish people to travel back to their homes. And we pray for rain. And the rain is the basis of our sustenance, especially in the climate where agriculture was the main economy of the Jewish people, that rain means everything, not only then, but now too. Without rain, where we would be. And that is the month of rain, where rain starts and we begin to pray for rain. Gishmei bracha, blessing. Furthermore, the first Bet HaMikdash was completed in Heshvan by Shlomo HaMelech. And also the third Bet HaMikdash is also destined to be completed or established in Heshvan to rectify the sin of Yeravam ben Avot that caused such a disaster amongst the Jewish people. So what is it? Is it a month of bitterness or emptiness? Or is it a month that is perhaps of lofty and great spiritual achievements? In my opinion, Heshvan is the prototype and the very purpose of our existence and of creation. Why did God create the world? Why did the Neshama descend into this world from a very high place, a very lofty place where it is only exposed to spirituality when it comes to a body, and this body has a Yetzer Hara, as an evil inclination, and we are surrounded by temptations and by physical mundane matters? Must be that in this world there exists some advantage, some quality that the Neshama alone, where it exists on a spiritual plane, cannot tap into, and can only tap into when the Neshama descends to this world, because it only makes sense that the Neshama would descend to this world for the purposes of an ascent. Yiridazu, letzorech aliyah, the whole purpose of this Yiridah, of this descent, is for the purposes of an ascent. And that is exactly what Heshvan is all about. Here we have the month of Tishrei, an absolute spiritual delight, lofty levels, great achievements are achieved in the month of Tishrei. But what now happens in the month of Heshvan, seemingly we go back, we descend back to the world. It's like the Neshama descending down to this world after it's exposed to spiritual delights in the Garden of Eden, in higher worlds and lofty levels. The Neshama descending down to this world for the purposes of why God created the world, in order to make a Dira B'Tachtonim, a dwelling place down below. So too one can argue that this is the whole point and purpose of the month of Heshvan, to be able to take the revelations of Tishrei and to be able to apply it to our daily lives. Like the Neshama descending from a high place into a low place, all in order for Yiridah letzorech aliyah, for the purposes of an ascent, for a spiritual gain or boon. The Gemara in Masechet Brachot tells us that when God said the world is Tov, Zeh Yetzer Tov. When God said Tov Me'od, we know when God completed the world, Vayar, and God looked upon the earth, and Vayar Ki Tov Me'od, for it's exceedingly good. The Gemara says this refers to the exceedingly good. What is exceedingly good here is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. In other words, the fact that we are exposed to an evil inclination allows us to not only achieve the God's Tov, God's goodness, but Tov Me'od, an exceeding level of good. And Me'od is, of course, the numerical value of Adam, man. For man creates a synthesis between heaven and earth. But also Adam is a numerical value of God's name, Shem Ma, which is spelt, when you spell out God's name, Bimilui, it's spelled like this: Yud, Vav, Daled, Hey, and Aleph, Vav, Aleph, Vav, Hey, and Aleph. When you spell out God's name, that's called Milui. In this particular way is the numerical value of 45. You count all of the numerics of all of the letters, it's called Shem Ma in Kabbalah. It's the numerical value of 45, which is the numerical value of Adam, which is the numerical value of Me'od, Tov Me'od. How do we achieve the Me'od? How do we tap into even a high level of godliness, specifically when the Neshama comes down to this world and is exposed to materialism and is exposed to the animalistic soul? And that's the Me'od. And the Holy Arizal says the Me'od is also a numerical value of Ge'ulah, which means redemption. How do we bring about redemption? When we are able to synthesize and harmonize body and soul, the evil inclination and the animal inclination, uplifting the animal inclination. And this is what Heshvan is all about. Back to the grind, to serve God in our worldly matters. So whereas the festivals, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, is like the ceremony of marriage between God and the Jewish people, and a marriage is a very special thing. And then there's the Sheva Brachot, and the time, the festivities is compared to Sukkot, and so on. So there is the ceremony, the marriage between God and the Jewish people that occurs on the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and then the honeymoon period of Sukkot and Simchat Torah. What happens after the honeymoon? It's all good and fine. The marriage ceremony itself, the wedding celebration, is a very beautiful thing. But it comes and goes. That's not the hikar. That's not the main thing. Not even the honeymoon. The honeymoon is a very nice time to get to know each other, etc. Spend some time alone together, like Shmini Atzeret, where God and the Jewish people become one. A festival just for us. But then ultimately, the whole purpose of the ceremony, the marriage and the honeymoon, the Sheva Brachot and everything, is for life. It's for the marriage itself. It's for the home, the marriage that you build, the children that you have, the home that you create. That's the purpose of the Seudah. That's the purpose of the whole celebration. The whole purpose is for the home and the marriage and the life that you build. And that's Heshvan. So Tishrei is like the marriage and all of the ceremonies and all of the celebrations. Heshvan is the actual life itself. We find a similar concept when God gathered the Jewish people around Har Sinai, and He gave them the 10 Commandments. And then after that, God commanded Moshe Rabbeinu to tell the Jewish people, Shuvu lachem la'aolechem. Return back to your tents. Return back to normal life. Till now, you were to separate from your wives to separate from their husbands, purify themselves, prepare themselves 3 days beforehand, go to the mikvah, etc., etc. Prepare for this awesome day, of which is the culmination of already the preparation of the 49 days that they counted before, which is like the Nidah state, where the woman counts 7 clean days, so to speak, to purify oneself. So 7 times 7 equals 49, because we're referring to how the emotions, each one is the 7 days correspond to the emotions, and everything about the world is encapsulated in the number 7. So the 7 contains within it all of the other 7 attributes. So 7 times 7 equals 49. So there is this concept of like the preparation or the build-up for the Har Sinai of the marriage between God and the Jewish people, like the preparation prior to the wedding, or the state of Nidah and the going to the mikvah and the unification of a husband and wife. That happened on Matan Torah, on the giving of the Torah. But after that, God told them, Shuvu lachem la'olechem. Go back to your tents, go back to normal lives. Now take the Torah that you have received on Har Sinai and bring it back. Bring it to your daily life. This is again the theme of what Heshvan is all about. And therefore, it is the very month that encapsulates the very purpose of existence, and that is why it must be right after Tishrei. If Tishrei corresponds to the creation of the world, of Rosh Hashanah is a creation of man and its purpose, then Tishrei is taking everything about the creation and applying it into the physical realm, into the daily grind, into the daily life. And incidentally, and I'll speak about it a little bit later, we know that every month corresponds to one of the Shvatim, one of the 12 tribes, and the month of Heshvan corresponds to the Shevet. Any ideas? Which Shevet, which tribe? Any ideas which month this corresponds to? Corresponds to Menashe. We will soon see the connection of Menashe to the month of Heshvan. But in the meantime, we will continue with this theme. We find in Parashat Noach what we just read, where it says in regards to Noach, Vayirbu hamayim. Vayirbu hamayim, the flood is called Men Noach, the flood of Noach. And the Baal HaTanya brings in Torah Or a very beautiful discourse explaining what this, in spiritual terms, what these waters refer to. This flood, Men Noach, refers to Maim Rabim lo yichlu lechabot et ahava, an immense and abundant water. Maim Rabim, a lot of water. Water is also has a spiritual connotation, both positive but also negative. And the negative connotation of water is matzmahim, that water gives growth to everything that is pleasurable. We know the more water there is in a fruit, the more sweet, the sweeter the fruit is. And so water is the that which allows for more pleasure, more desire, the symbol of desire in this world. But it is also a symbol of tirdot parnasa, daily life, the challenges of life, of earning a livelihood, of living life. Living life itself is a challenge. There's many challenges to living life, and to be able to find happiness and fulfillment and contentment in life and spirituality in life, despite the fact that these raging waters can consume us, can submerge us and drown us. And therefore, the Maim Rabim, these many waters, refer to the waters that can, the physical challenges of this world. Yet we find a very interesting thing, that by Noah, it says, Vayirbu HaMaim, the Maim increased, 40 days, 40 nights there was waters. Vayirbu HaMaim, the Maim increased. Vayisu et HaTeva, and they uplifted the Teva. Vataru Ma'al Haaretz, and the Teva was thus uplifted from upon the earth. Vatelech HaTeva al Penei HaMaim, and the Teva, the ark, traveled upon the water, which means that the water did not disturb the ark, but rather the ark was on top of it, and because of the water, the ark was uplifted. Vayisu et HaTeva, it was uplifted. Vatal, vataku me'al haaretz, and it went from upon the earth. What do we learn from this? So Teva in Hebrew means ark, but it also means words, letters and words. Otiyot ve'tevot. Tevot means words. And it refers to man itself, the challenge or the purpose of man. We know that when man was created, the Midrash calls it, the man was a speaking, Vayi lenefesh haya, and he became a living being. The Targum translates it that he became a speaking being. The uniqueness of man is that he can articulate things, words, and create a bond between people, but also between God. And the Teva, these words are the words that we communicate in the world, but particularly the words that we are to express in prayer and in Torah. The Holy Arizal explains to us that prayer is so immense and so important and so powerful that Ikara Tikkun, the main rectification of worlds, occurs specifically in our prayer. We rectify all worlds and we draw down immense blessings and rectification specifically through prayer. And therefore, our words of prayer are extremely significant. One may think that the prayer of a scholar who is protected from the mundane and earning a livelihood and the physicality of the world, that his prayer are much higher than that of a person who works in the mundane and physical world. It says in Torah, or no, that's not the case. Vata'al ateva, specifically because of the challenges of the mind, specifically because of the challenges of this world. When we turn to God to pray, despite the challenges that we have, and we dedicate time and we become focused and become detached from the materialism of the world, even though we exist within the confines of materialism of this world, our prayers and our Torah words are uplifted to unimaginable heights, even higher than what they are on in and of themselves, which means that the Maim Rabim, that the Menashe, is that which is responsible, together coupled with our service of God, to go up to higher levels. What do we learn from this? We learn from this that the challenges of life, the fact that the neshama comes down to this world and overcomes the challenges of life, the neshama is lifted to higher realms than what it existed before. So we see that the very waters of Noah, as opposed to submerging the ark, in fact uplifted the ark, was the very reason why the ark was lifted to higher heights, which is the To'ov Me'od of the Yetzer Hara, of the animalistic soul of our physical and mundane drives. In this week's parasha, we're just about to read Lech Lecha. What is Lech Lecha? a test, one of the 10 tests. We know that Abraham Avinu, before he was proclaimed as the first forefather, he was tested 10 tests. 10, of course, is a significant number, but we're not going to speak about it now. One of the tests is this week's parasha, Lech Lecha. What's the test? Abraham Avinu was commanded by God to leave his land, the place of his birth, where he's familiar with, La'aretz asher areka, to the land that I will show you. That's surely just moving house. I know that people have moved houses. That's a challenge. It's a big balagan. One of the most stressful things. They made a survey. One of the most stressful things in life is moving house. When you move house, it's one of the stressful things. People like to avoid it if they can. Can you imagine moving house, moving town, moving city, moving country, and leaving everything that is yeah, you know about it? You know a little bit about it? Okay, so the Jews know very, very well that feeling. So that's a test, right? Seemingly not so. Why? Because God said to Abraham, Lech Lecha. Lecha. Why the double expression, Lech Lecha? Go for yourself. La'anatcha letovatcha, says Rashi. Go for your own benefit. Here you cannot have children. There you will have children. I'm promising you that you will become famous and you will become a forefather, etc., etc. Where's the test here? Lech Lecha letovatcha la'anatcha. Where's the test? This is one of the 10 tests. Move from Australia, move from here, move from Bondi, and go to Vaucluse. I'm giving you, you're renting, I'm giving you a house on the waterfront. It's a challenge to move, it's a big balagan, you're going to have to call the movers, and it's a balagan, right? He would not do it? I'm giving you...
Yeah, but he wasn't told where he's going.
That's a separate issue. But the point is, letovatcha la'anatcha. Who, God forbid, no one should ever know that someone who doesn't have children and is promised, you go from here to here, you'll have children. Who would not do that? And you promised wealth, you promised everything, you promised that you will become a forefather. Who would not do that? I'm just picking the most simple of examples, just moving from a rental apartment in Bondi to a beautiful house on the waterfront in Vaucluse. Who would not do that? I would go through the difficulties and move. Why not? It's a benefit forever. Why would I not do that? It's a little bit uncomfortable. Letovatcha la'anatcha. It's for your benefit, for your good. Where's the test? Where's the test? That's precisely the test. The test is in your life. Letovatcha la'anatcha. When you are thrown in the fiery furnace, bow down to an idol or serve God, and you choose to serve God. Of course, that's a test. It's a very big test. But it's so obvious and it's so clear for someone who has convictions and morals and values. It's obvious. But where it's not so obvious, where things are blurred and not so clear, is in your daily life. How do you serve God in your daily life? So Abraham Avinu, you're very great spiritually. And when you put to the test, and when you're asked to spread the name of God and stand up for what you believe in, you do so. Kol hakavod. But how about letovatcha la'anatcha? How about if I give you a house on the Vaucluse, on the waterfront? How will you behave then? How will you, when you become engulfed in and involved in the physical world, what will you do then? How will you serve God then? Will you serve God with the same spirituality as you do that of Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur, it's not a big test, or Rosh Hashanah when we listen to the shofar. It's not so hard to shed a tear of spirituality, of longing for godliness. But what about if we live in the grind and we're going through the difficulties? Do we then serve God then? And do we serve God with simcha and joy then? That's the test. Bata'ala teva. The idea is to be in Menashe, in the flood, in the raging waters, and that the teva, and that we still become uplifted and not descend into the materialism of the world. That indeed is the test. And that is what God told the Jewish people after the giving of the Torah, seeming an anticlimax. Here we have the giving of the Torah, and then Moshe Rabbeinu said, okay, go back to your homes. Go back to your daily lives. Oh, what an anticlimax. Isn't there something grand that God wants us to do now? Isn't there something extraordinary that God... No, God wants you to go home. Go home to your lives. Because that is extraordinary. To be able to serve God, not just in the Yom Kippur, not just in the Rosh Hashanah, and feel uplifted, but to be uplifted in your homes, that is extraordinary. the lech lecha, the go to for your own benefit. In other words, serving God within the normal life, that is extraordinary. And that is one of the tests. There's a very interesting Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah, page 18, which I like very much. And there's a conversation between two great scholars. One of them is Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, and one of them is Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion. Anybody heard of Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion? Yeah. He's famous, Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion. Why? He's one of the 10 great Jewish leaders that was killed. That was martyred. Asura Arugem Malchut. That's correct. He was killed at Kiddush Hashem for the sake of the sanctifying of God's name. In the time when the Roman ruled, and the Akiva too, and when the temple was destroyed. So Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma was sick. He was about to pass away. And Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion came to visit him. And they had a conversation. And he said, I heard about you, despite the decree that the Romans have made, that you are makil, you gather people around and you teach Torah. I wouldn't be surprised if they burn you with the Torah. And that's exactly what they did. What do we learn from this Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion? Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion had an unbelievable self-sacrifice for Torah, was willing to sacrifice his life, and indeed he was killed. He was killed. Now, the conversation doesn't stop there. Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion asked Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, Ma'ani la'olam haba, l'chai olam haba. What's going to be with me in the world to come? Am I worthy of a place in the world to come? So, what do you think Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma asked him? Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma would have asked him, are you learning Torah? Are you teaching Torah? Are you studying Torah? Are you teaching Torah? He didn't ask him that. And the fact is that we know that he was studying Torah and teaching Torah at self-sacrifice. He was one of the great scholars of the Jewish people. What more than that? He asked him a very interesting question, and I love this question. Klum ma'aseh ba leyadcha? Did any small insignificant matter come your way? In other words, I'm not asking you what you do in the synagogue. I know what you do in the synagogue. I'm not asking you what you do in the Bet HaMidrash, in the house of study. I know what you do there. What does it do in the synagogue? He prays. In the house of study, he studies. On Yom Kippur, you fast. On Rosh Hashanah, you listen to the shofar. On Sukkot, you sit in the sukkah, you shake the lulav. I'm not asking you any of this. I'm asking you, has anything just ordinary come your way? Just a klum ma'aseh ba liyadcha, anything ordinary. And then he says, yes. And he said, one time, I was carrying money for Purim, and I was carrying money for tzedakah. Purim Seudah, for the Seudah of Purim, for the meal of Purim. And in the other pocket, I had money for tzedakah, and for charity. And a person came my way and asked for charity, and I put my hand in the wrong pocket, and I gave him, and I touched the money of that was allocated, not for tzedakah, but for my own personal needs. And so what did you do? And he said, I didn't put the money back and then give him the money for zakah. When he came to ask me, I put my hand in my pocket and by accident I hit the money of zakah. I gave him that money. I said, oh, if that's the case, let my portion be like your portion. What? We're talking about Rabbi Hanina ben Tradion that gave up his life for teaching Torah. And this is what he judged him on. Yes, he judged him on the little things in life. Because the Yom Kippurs of our lives, the Rosh Hashanah of our lives, the extraordinary things of our lives, the day that we got married, or the honeymoon that we got married, yes, so we're all on the best behavior. We're all behaving nicely. We all speak the nicest. We all are smiles and all. But what happens 2 years down the track, 7 years down the track? How many years? 3 years down the track. What happens then? How do you behave then? How do you speak then? What do you do in ordinary mundane? How do you conduct your life in the ordinary and in the mundane? Not when people are around. The people around here, we're all on the best behavior. We all speak very nicely to our husbands and to our wives and to our guests and vice versa. But what about when you're just at home alone, doing nothing? How do you behave then? What do you say then? What's your relationship with God then? And this is what he asked him. I'm not asking you what you do on Yom Kippur, because I know what a good Jew does on Yom Kippur. And I'm not asking you what you do in the synagogue. And I'm not asking you what you do when you have to give tzedakah. I'm asking you what you do on a regular Monday, when nothing is happening. What do you do then? How do you conduct yourself? Do you think about God then? Do you think about doing something that is extraordinary in the ordinary, in the mundane? Do you think of doing something holy in the mundane? Do you think about God regularly? This is what Heshvan is all about. We just came from the month of Tishrei. We only thought about God and food. Now in Heshvan, are we only going to think only about food? Or are we going to think about God as well? That's what Heshvan is all about. This is the theme of Heshvan. This is why Heshvan is so important. And there needs not be any more festivals right now, because the idea is, what do we do after? Well, they had all of the festivals. What do we do with it then? Which now brings me to a very interesting story, which you all know. This month corresponds to the tribe of Menashe. Why Menashe? What's so unique about Menashe? Let's see. Remember that Menashe and Ephraim were born to Yosef in the land of Egypt. Yaakov Avinu, when he was about to pass away, he proclaimed, he brought his children, Yosef, he goes, bring me the children. And he said, I'm going to bless these two children, and I'm going to bless them and proclaim them that they will be like all of the other, my children. In other words, my grandchildren, the only grandchildren, these grandchildren, the only grandchildren that I have, that I'm putting them on the same level as Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yisachar, Yehuda, Yisachar, etc., etc., etc. On the same, one second, on the same footing. They're on the same level. Menashe, Ephraim, Reuven, Shimon, Yuli. Menashe and Ephraim will be like Reuven and Shimon to me. Equal the same thing. And indeed, the tribe of Yosef was split into two, and each one had equal footing. An extraordinary thing. Why? Why these? What about the children of Levi? What about the children of Yehuda? Yehuda had extraordinary children, of which Mashiach comes from, Peretz. So why? Because these children, his grandchildren, were brought up in the house of Yaakov. They were brought up in the Bet HaMidrash. They were brought up in the synagogue. Where were these two children brought up? Menashe and Ephraim, where were they brought up? In the most impure land of Egypt. And still, they maintained their spiritual lofty level. Yaakov was so impressed by that he said, these two are giants for me. They're equal to me like you. And therefore, if you don't mind, we'll just take the blessings afterwards. We'll just take the questions afterwards. Otherwise, we'll lose our. And then we'll take the questions, if you don't mind. So first of all, he gathered them and he says he's going to bless them and he's going to make them equal. That's number one. Then what he did, another extraordinary thing. Yosef brought Menashe and put him on the right of Yaakov, and put Ephraim on the left of Yaakov, and Yaakov crossed his hands. And he put his right hand on Ephraim and left hand on Menashe. Why? Because he saw a quality in Ephraim that would surpass, in certain ways, that of Menashe. So then the obvious question is, so first of all, we understand that Menashe and Ephraim, both of them are giants, because they were on equal footing with the rest of the tribes. But Ephraim had a quality that Menashe did not have, at least in some aspects that Yaakov recognized. If that's the case, First of all, Yaakov did what he did, and Ephraim and Yosef put his hand on it to correct him. Who are you correcting? Can you imagine the tzaddik of the generation? Can you imagine the Ben Ishai sitting here, and his grandchildren are brought before him, and he does this, and his son, the Ben Ishai was a Ruach Bar Ruach HaKodesh, endowed with divine intuition. And and I would be there and I would correct him? Who might have corrected him? This guy, the heavens are open to him. Or for that matter, any tzaddik. Who was Yosef to come and challenge and disagree with his father? And why did he disagree? His father did something. He understood. He obviously it clearly crossed his hands because he knew what he was doing. He knew that Menashe is sitting on his right, and he knew Ephraim's on the left. So it wasn't like that he didn't know that this was the firstborn, because he placed him there. So what was the intention of Yaakov, and what was the intention of Yosef? Yosef also had an intention over here behind his actions as well. Yaakov had intentions behind his actions. Yosef also had a claim here, also had an argument. What was the argument of Yaakov? What was the argument of Yosef? Furthermore, if that's the case, why didn't he say, look, my son, if you don't mind, just change places. You be on my left, and you be on my right, and I'll bless you normally. He didn't do that either. Which means that rightfully, there is a dimension by which Menashe stays there at the right. There is a quality of Menashe that is there, right there on the right. The right shows strength and shows preeminence. But there's a quality that he recognized in Ephraim, and that is why he crossed off his hands, which means that there was a quality to both. But Yosef, he saw the quality in Menashe, and Ephraim saw, and Yaakov saw a quality in Ephraim. And we know, of course, Ephraim, who came from Ephraim? Yoshua, that led the Jewish people in the land of Israel. And Ephraim was a greater scholar than that of Menashe. Greater scholars. Not that Menashe wasn't a scholar, he was a scholar, but not the same as Ephraim. Like Zvulun and Yisachar. Zvulun also studied Torah, but Yisachar was a greater scholar. So what was going on over here? So we understand that Yosef gave preeminence, that Yaakov gave preeminence to Ephraim, because Ephraim was more studious, more scholarly than Menashe. And because Yoshua came out of, will eventually come out from Ephraim, which would be the leader of the Jewish people. Okay. Now we find that Moshe Rabbeinu, that when the Jewish people camped, they camped in groups of 3. There was always the first tribe, and then the second, and then the third. So in the group of 3, Ephraim always preceded that of Menashe. But we find something very interesting, because in regards to when the Torah lists all of the tribes, it says as follows. It says, Ve'achonim alav, and those that are camped with him, is such tribe and such tribe. But in regards to Menashe, Ephraim, which came first, and then Menashe, it doesn't say this language. It says, Ve'alav, and on top of him, Mate Menashe. Which means even though that in the encampment, Ephraim was before Menashe, but in the wording, Menashe was above Ephraim in certain aspects. That's number 1. Number 2, we find that when Moshe counted the Jewish people in Parashat Pinchas, he first counted who? Menashe, not Ephraim. And furthermore, I'll tell you something else. When the tribe of no. It's just slipped my mind. Gad and Reuven, thank you very much. When the tribe of Reuven and Gad wanted to encamp in the Transjordan, Moshe Rabbeinu agreed under certain conditions when he saw that he understood that their intentions were L'Shem Shamayim, were for the sake of heaven. In other words, not to enter Israel proper. We're not going to get into that. That's a separate shiur, why and how and when. But Moshe Rabbeinu appointed half of the tribe of Menashe to be with them. Why did he appoint half of the tribe of Menashe? Because Menashe was scholars. And he wanted the influence of Menashe to be together with the Reuven and Gad. 1 second. Ephraim, you wanted scholars, you wanted Talmidei Hachamim, you wanted rabbis. Take from the tribe of Ephraim. Take from the tribe of Yisachar. Take from the tribe of Levi. Why did you take Menashe? Why didn't you not take from the tribe of greater scholars than them? Why Dafka Menashe? It goes to the core who Menashe is. Menashe really was the true heir of Yosef. Yosef was on a supreme level than all of the other tribes. Each one had their own quality. Melucha, kingship, was from Yehuda, etc., etc. But there's a quality to Yosef that Yaakov recognized. And that is why Yosef is called Tzaddik Yisod Olam. Yosef had Tzaddik. All of them were tzaddikim, all of them. Why was it called Yosef HaTzaddik? The Zohar HaKadosh says that tzaddik is that which unites heaven and earth. The sfira of Yisod, tzaddik Yisod Olam, the foundation of the world, we know that we have 6 emanations. The 5th emanation, which is Hesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod. After the 5th, the 6th one is Yisod. Yisod is the foundation. Why is it called foundation? Because it takes from all of the 5 other attributes and gives it over to Malchut. It's a bridge. It's a between the high and the lower. So why is that tzaddik called tzaddik Yisod Olam? Because as it says, Lecha Hashem ha'gdula v'ha'gvura v'ha'tiferet v'ha'netzah v'ha'hod. Here it lists in the pasuk the 5 attributes, the 5 emotions. Ha'gdula v'ha'gvura, Hesed, Gvura, Tiferet v'ha'netzah v'ha'hod. Ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz, lecha Hashem ha'mamlacha. Ki chol in Kabbalah, kol is the attribute of Yisod. Why? Because ki kol b'shamayim u'va'aretz, it unites heaven and earth. Yosef had the power to unite heaven and earth more so than the other tribes. That's why he was sent to Egypt. That's why he became the viceroy of Egypt. What do you think? Yosef gave him a coat of many colors. He can't just stand. No, he hid his kedusha. He hid it in a garment. He hid it in the mundane. And that was Menashe as well. Menashe hid his greatness. Ephraim was the studious one. He studied all the time. But Menashe, he was the statesman. He was also big Talmid Hacham. He was also a great scholar. But he hid it. He hid it like Yosef hid, like Yaakov hid the greatness of Yosef in the garb of the materialism. So to Menashe. Menashe's greatness was hidden specifically in the world. That's Heshvan. That's Heshvan. And that's Menashe. And Menashe is able to unite heaven and earth more so than that of Ephraim. And therefore, when the tribe of Reuven and Gad were in the Transjordan, separated from the other tribes, they needed someone not only of Torah, but someone of leadership. Someone who's able to unite the two. Someone who's able to unite the heaven and earth. Someone who's able to unite the spiritual and the material. And no one like Menashe. Yes, Ephraim was a greater scholar. Issachar was a greater scholar. Levi were greater scholars. Greater scholars than Menashe. But no one was like Menashe that can synthesize the two and have both qualities. And that was why Yosef insisted that Menashe be here even when Yaakov showed the other way around. He says, no, he's very unique. And Yaakov agreed. But not everybody could be as unique as Menashe, that could live in both worlds. So therefore, Yaakov twisted his hand. Because we excel in one or the other. Either we excel in the spiritual, or we excel in the physical. And those who are scholars are scholars, and those who are merchants and business people are business people. It's very, very rare to excel in both. Menashe excelled in both, but that's not the usual. And that's why Yaakov gave the blessing to Ephraim, or the preeminence to Ephraim, because we can either be either this or that, and if you're going to be either this and that, then might as well be the scholar, because nothing greater than Torah. But Menashe, I agree with you. Yaakov agrees with Yosef. Not everybody is like you, and not everybody is like him. Not everybody can bring together two worlds, harmonize two worlds. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu says, it doesn't say Vahonim alav, alav ve'alav, and on top of Ephraim is Menashe. Because in certain aspects, Menashe may not be a greater scholar than Ephraim, but he to be able to synthesize both worlds, heaven and earth, that Menashe can do much greater than Ephraim. And when you have the two tribes of Reuven and Gad on the Transjordan that needed guidance, who are they going to get it from? They need someone who can. Ultimately, they're going to be predominantly involved in the physical world. You need a statesman. You need someone who can bridge both worlds, both the Torah world and the mundane, the physical and the spiritual. The greatest example of that is Menashe. So the heir of Yosef HaTzadik was Menashe. He's a prototype of living in two worlds and succeeding. And that is why he is specifically the Shevet, the tribe that is associated with which, not the month of Tishrei, which is full of spirituality. No, the mundane one. The one that has no festival whatsoever. The festival of Heshvan. Or Mar Heshvan. So Mar could be bitter because it has no festival, but Mar could be master. To master this world is the greatest thing and the greatest objective. And all of Am Yisrael are tzadikim, because we are goy ahad ba'aretz. We are, literally means goy ahad ba'aretz. We are one nation, a united nation in the world, ba'aretz in earth. But the spiritual translation of that verse is goy. We are a nation, ehad, that is able to take the oneness of God ba'aretz and reveal it in this world. Goy ehad ba'aretz. We are able to, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Ehad, reveal the oneness of God in the physical. We have a kavanah. One of the simple kavanot that's brought in Shulchan Aruch is that when we say the Shema, we say Shema Yisrael. Here is Hashem Elokeinu. The Lord is our God. Hashem Ehad. He is one. What is one? So the Gemara tells us the word Ehad is the unification of three things. Aleph, Het, Dalet. Aleph is Alofo Shel Olam, master of the world. He is one and singular. Het is the seven heavens and earth. That's 8. The numerical value of Het is 8. And Dalet is the four corners of the world, the more mundane, the inanimate, the vegetable, the animal, the human. Afar, Esh, Ruach, Mayim, the earth, wind, fire, and what's the other one? Earth, wind, fire, gas, energy, whatever, air, etc. The most physical aspects. And when we mechaven, when we have in mind, it says, Kol ha'ma'arich be'ehad, ma'arichin lo yamav shenotav. The Gemara says, whoever elongates the ehad, our intention, in the word ehad, which means the oneness of God. In other words, whoever extends the oneness of God in this world, they bless him with length of years. It says specifically which part of ehad. Because we have three concepts in the Ehad. The letter Dalet. Why the Dalet? Because that refers to the most mundane of the three. The most physical. He was able to draw down the oneness of God and find the oneness of God in the most physical, in the most material. Such a person deserving of length of days and years. And it is by no accident that the name Menashe is the very same word as Neshama. And just as the neshama descends from a high place to a low place, so to Menashe is able to have the strength to come from Yaakov and Yosef and to live in Egypt and to be the right hand man of Yosef, because he knew how to bridge the two levels. And just as Yosef was garbed, his greatness was hidden. He was able to live in a world where he was thrown into jail into Egypt as a slave. The whole episode of Potiphar, it says that he had extraordinary beauty that all the women in Egypt would climb up on top just to see his beauty. Yet he maintained his righteousness all the way through. And when these brothers came and revealed, Ani Yosef, I am the same Yosef that I left you before with the same level of righteousness. I haven't minimized it in any way, shape, or form. Just as the neshama comes from a high place and a low place, it's always is holy and is always attached to God. And just as the neshama is enclosed in a body, is hidden in a body, so too Yosef was hidden in the garb of the multicolored coat, so to speak. And so too was he hidden in the materialism and the shell of Egypt, and being a viceroy in Egypt, yet he was the highest of highs. So too was Menashe. Neshama. The neshama is clothed and hidden in the body for the purposes of working through the body. And that is what the month of Heshvan is all about. It comes right after Tishrei. How do you unpack all of the great lofty revelations that happened, and the marriage between us and God, and the honeymoon, and now back to the grind, the normal day-to-day life is the real purpose of our existence, is the purpose of creation, and is the purpose of the Yamim Tovim in the first place. The Yamim Tovim are there really to inspire the rest of the year. So the Heshvan is the prototype of the whole purpose of creation. Are there any questions? There were some questions.